gentlemen, the first man to build 21-inch biceps, drug-free.
Do we have a chance to put microphones in between a bigot and somebody who is the object of his bigotry? That's exactly what we will do right here on the next edition of the Barry Farber Show. That's no dirty joke. It's no clean joke. It's no joke. It is my plan for a broadcast which will take place right here if you keep your radio fixed right where it is. I have to tell listeners about my double life, because if you listen to these broadcasts, you know that these are interviews and that we do them over a table, usually one person at a time, and you don't know about my activities in New York City, where I do a back and forth, fire-eating, sword-swallowing, ping-pong, badminton, tennis, and hardball act across a net with my listeners. And they call me, and we have a terrible time agreeing on things, and that's what I like. 2 scorpions in a bottle. That's the best show in the world. Anyhow, one listener kept calling, and he and I agreed that America's in decline. The cities are smoldering, festering fever swamps of pestilence and degeneration and filth and crime and disease, not just the kind that affects the body, but the kind that affects the body and the soul of a nation. And we'd agree. And then just before I wanted to nominate that young man for vice president, he'd say something racist, anti-black, anti-Puerto Rican, something so bigoted, and it would disappoint me every time, because I'd forget from one time he called to the next that it was the same guy. All I knew is he had a good, strong voice. And then he'd go into that racist tank, and I'd say, oh, please, not you again. I finally decided I wanted to meet this young man. I arranged a breakfast, and we met. His name is John Van Soest. It's his real name. He's in the computer field in New York City, Vietnam veteran. He'll tell you something about his background later on. But after meeting John, I decided John and Leroy should meet each other. Leroy Colbert, a Mr. America, black. I mean, he looks like a whole black power movement all by himself. He's one of the healthiest people. It shows that you lifted weight. If I was ever your defense attorney, I'd say, Leroy, I advise you not to go in there and deny that you lift weights. I don't care. No, don't. I don't care what your other lawyer says. You go in there and you admit that you have lifted weights in your time, because it would be futile to deny it. He is one of the most beautiful people in the history of the world. Leroy, you and I have discussed race many times. I wanted you to meet John and hear what he has to say, and then I want to hear what you have to say, and then we'll keep on saying things until the clock runs out. John, why don't you pretend that you never said it before to me on the phone in New York or on these microphones at our last regularly scheduled broadcast. Just start all over again.
Well, Barry, I don't have anything against decent blacks, like I'm sure Leroy is just by this short time of speaking to him. But my feeling is that most blacks and Puerto Ricans are not like Leroy. Most of them are responsible for all the negative things going on in our society, the killings, robberies, vicious crimes, rapes, thievery, filthy streets, burned out neighborhoods. And I'm sick and tired of hearing those idiotic excuses that it's because they're poor. If you're poor, if you haven't got a penny in your pocket, it doesn't force you to throw trash in the streets. You can hold on to it. I'm sick and tired of hearing that the reason that they do these things is because they live in a ghetto. There are certain things that don't have to be taught in life. You don't have to be taught that it's wrong to kill. You don't have to be taught that it's wrong to crack somebody over the head because you want something for nothing. I'm tired of hearing that every time someone commits a crime, every time a Puerto Rican or a black commits a crime, it's because there was some injury to his delicate psyche years ago. He didn't get the flavor lollipop he liked. I thought the reason for robbing and killing and mugging was very simple, to get something for nothing. I'm tired of hearing the excuses for this. How come the landlords, they try to blame it on the landlords for the bombed out neighborhoods? How come landlords are able to hang around through the Jewish influx, the Polish influx, the German influx, but they finally couldn't take it once the blacks and Puerto Ricans moved in? I'm watching my neighborhood be destroyed now. There was never There was no crimes in my neighborhood, or hardly any crimes, maybe kids just fighting or something, until these people moved in. Now I'm hearing of burning buildings, stabbings in hallways. The entire city looks like, where these people live anyway, looks like one big jail. A disgrace to the United States to see all kinds of gates over all the stores because they have to protect their property from marauding troglodytes. This is incredible, and nothing's done about it for the sake of racial tolerance. Nobody's allowed to say anything from the heart because Mayor Koch is being called a bigot now because he doesn't give them every single thing they want.
All right,
Leroy Colbert.
let's get something straight. You see, it's very easy to complain, but for every action there's reaction. You cannot divorce the history of this country from the actions of a certain group of people. Now, I don't know what your race is. I don't know what are you? Are you Jewish or are you, what are you, Anglo-Saxon?
German, Dutch, and Irish
You're
background.
German, Dutch, and Irish background, right? Okay. Now you tell me about the Polish and the so forth that's come to this country. Now, you are completely disregarding. Now, look, let me get something straight. I do not believe there's any excuse for killing. There's no excuse for robbing. I'm not making excuses for the excesses of some of the criminal black. But let me get something straight to you right now, which you're just running off your mouth and you're not understanding. Blacks have no power in this country. Anything that goes on in this country is gone on with the approval of the ruling class. Now, when you say, I hear so often, black racist, you know, to be a racist, you have to have power. I wouldn't give a damn what you thought about me, as long as you cannot implement it. If you tell me you hate me, it wouldn't affect my life one iota, unless your hate would make it necessary that I couldn't get a job, I couldn't eat a sandwich in peace. That's the only way you could be a racist. You can sit here and rant and rave all you want, and as long as it doesn't affect me, then I don't give a damn whether you're a racist or not. Now, we talk about black racism, but I like to know how in the world can black racism affect white people when white people are the ruling class? Blacks do not have the power to implement racism. Now, when I hear you talking, nothing infuriates me more than to hear people just as polite say, the Irish did it, the Poles did it. I mean, then you know damn well the Irish and the Poles and everybody else came to this country willingly. Now, of course, we must also admit that there's a psychological difference in the black that they allow themselves to be brought here as slaves and took it. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and apologize for the excesses of blacks, but I still don't want you to sit here and blame all of the ills of this country on a powerless people.
I'm Barry Farber. When boxers really feel it, they keep on slugging right after the bell. And so do people on radio shows when they mean deeply what they're saying. Leroy, do you want to just continue that flourish for a minute, and then we'll let John respond?
I believe in this. This is my philosophy. If somebody kick you in the behind and knock you down, you have two choices. Lay there or get up. I believe in getting up. I know that there are a lot of blacks that believe in laying there. But you're not solving the problem by condemning. You're not trying to. You see, you're sitting there so lofty saying, well, they do this, they do that, they do this. But for everything that anybody does, there's a reason. Now, I'm not saying that we're supposed to condone it, but instead of you allying with this society to correct it, you think you're going to solve something by condemning. There's enough condemnation. This has been done since the beginning of time. The point is, you tell me now, and of course you set yourself up as God. You are to say who is the decent blacks and who aren't the decent blacks based on you. But what gives you feel so pompous, so important, because of your background, that you can say who is decent and who isn't decent. You see, now what I'm trying to say to you is, you have never in your life, and you could tell me anything you want, faced rejection because of your race. And you will never know what it is to be condemned for no other reason except your skin is black. Now, we have opened the doors for blacks, no doubt. But a lot of blacks aren't prepared for those open doors. Because since I've been a kid, you know what I've heard from blacks? You can't, how you gonna? You know why? Because ever since I was a kid, I was told, you're not going to get a break in this society. And when I tried to get a break, I was denied a break. But that could destroy me. A lot of people aren't strong enough to stand up against that rejection. Now, wait a minute. That doesn't mean that we have to condone robbing. I know we got a lousy criminal element out there that's enjoying this so-called hiatus, this white guilt, and that's what it is. It's nothing but guilt. It's a guilt feeling. Open the doors. Give him a break. Here. You take a guy and you lock him in a room for all of his life. He gets 20 years old. You say, look, go to college. Here, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. And then when he fails, see, dumb jackass didn't have it in the first place. You see, it's all, now you're going to sit back after you let the barn door open and let the people that are unprepared out, and they fail, and they do all the things that you said, I told you so. Now you're comfortable? Do you think your idea is going to save this country?
Well,
Save this country.
This is exactly the type of phony excuse that I was talking about. The blacks say, Leroy says that the blacks have no power. Every time I've heard of a black getting power, he's abused it. There was a mayor of Mississippi that abused, I forget, I don't remember the story exactly. But anyway, he was either indicted or he was kicked out because he misused funds or something.
Every time you have a black
One
man,
more.
huh?
No, but the thing is, blacks are saying, put us in a position of power, give us a chance. And then instead of doing something for their people, they go ahead and abuse it. The leaders of CORE...
How many?
Let me finish. The leaders of CORE were indicted. CORE folded recently because the leaders of CORE were using the money for Cadillacs and for their homes. The NAACP is in trouble because the money is being abused. You know, so this is nonsense.
In other words,
people are not.
But so in other words, you're telling me now that where do you think the few that now you say the blacks, first of all, you hold one person, but you forgot about Nixon, you forgot about Mayor Daley, you forgot about Hugh Agnew. If you're going to sit, you see what you want to do is, you know what you want to do? You want to find the rotten apple in the barrel. You know what you do? You go and buy a barrel of apples, and you will dig down to the bottom. You find one apple and say, I told you the barrel was rotten. That's what you want to do. You see, you have the nerve to sit here and tell me that when you give a black man power, he abuses it, and you name one mayor of Mississippi, and you got reams of books about the abuse of power in this country by white people? I mean, what are you trying to do? Well, the most important thing is, for your own mind and for the mind of listeners, what are you trying? What is your purpose?
Well, I don't know what you're trying to say.
No,
but
what is your purpose? What are you trying to do?
Well, I don't know. This guy's one of these...
All you're doing is saying you're condemning. All right, now when you finish condemning, the problem that you have created is still there. Now what do you do?
John Soust.
Tell me that.
John Soust, S-O-E-S-T. Your turn.
Well, this guy's one of these ramblers that doesn't let you get a word in edgewise. I'm not saying... He, as you would say, Barry, he's inferring where I did not imply. The blacks are condemning whites for abusing them and abusing the power that they have. The thing that I'm saying is that if the blacks got power, who's to say that they wouldn't abuse it just like whites do? They're no different than anybody else.
You admit that? You admit that they abuse, the whites abuse. In other words, you just told me that blacks only abuse. No,
sure they do, but what blacks are saying is that give us a chance and we won't do what whites do.
That's the thing. Who said that? I never heard that in my life.
Well, aren't blacks going around saying that give us a chance and you'll see what we can do?
Who? What black said that?
All the black leaders.
Name one.
Well, look who the leaders of the blacks are.
Name one. But first of all,
let me tell you.
First of all, we're wasting time. You have given us a problem. What do you propose to correct? Because all you're doing...
No, you see...
Well, no, you have condemned. You said they rob, they steal. Fine, we know that. What are you going to do to correct?
Don't you understand? I'm not in a position...
Anybody can condemn.
I'm not in a position to do anything about it.
But you're talking...
Let me finish.
Anybody. Have you got any...
Are you afraid to hear what I've got to say?
Of course not.
Well, then let me finish a statement.
Go right ahead.
The people who are in power to do something about this try to hide it. They're trying to hide it all the time. They're trying to say that, well, it's the whites that held them down. It's these white lackeys with this misplaced sense of guilt that are saying, give them everything they want, and no matter what kind of crimes they commit, we'll overlook it because they've been held down for 400 years.
They haven't?
I mean, look what happened.
Has it been that? That's an illusion? Have you been held down?
No, blacks actually...
What have you done?
But
look,
the thing is,
first
blacks,
of all, you have not been held down, have you?
I'm not talking... Yeah, but I don't...
Do you know what it is to be held down?
I don't...
Do you know what it is to be denied the dignity of a sandwich as a gentleman? Do you know what it is?
If I didn't have a...
I mean, for you to sit... Well,
if I didn't have...
I don't want to get an argument.
If I didn't have any money in my pocket, I wouldn't go around throwing trash in the streets, regardless of what color I was.
All right. Now you...
And the people I'm talking about despise this country. The young blacks coming up despise America, and they hate whites. And they
obviously you hate blacks. So what's the big deal? That's eliminated.
But who has more
That's
reason?
eliminated right there.
Who has more reason?
You mean to tell me you have more reason? You know something? Let me tell you something. If blacks, you're so naive that you don't have enough common sense to know that if blacks were like you would have no country. Do you know that? Do you know if the blacks would respond? Do you see what the Irish are doing for the minor discrimination compared to the blacks? If the blacks would respond to this country by what was done to them, you would have no United States of America. Do you know how few people it takes to destroy a country? You're sitting up there saying, do you know something? In the time where blacks were held down and denied the dignity of a human being, if a small, minute fraction of those people would have rebelled against this country, there'd be no United States. You know there's 20 million blacks in this country. If 10%, 3%, did what the IRA are doing in Ireland, there would be no more United States.
In the next stanza, I will impose modified martial law. I will give each of my participants on this panel the same amount of time to speak, and regardless of what he says, there shall be no interruption. I'm Barry Farber. Let me explain who we are and what we're up to. John Van Soest is a young American, 32 years old, Vietnam veteran. He's my regular listener to the radio show in New York City where I talk back and forth with listeners, and he admits he is, by my standards, a racial bigot. I wanted to meet him. I wanted to compare mentalities with him because he, unlike most bigots, is not just sitting in a bar room cussing and spitting vulgarities out at different people of different skin colors. He speaks well. He handles the English language well. And I figured he was different. He was somebody I would like to get to know. Having gotten to know him, I wanted him to meet somebody who I know good and well is worth knowing because I've known him for years on these microphones, Leroy Colbert. And Leroy, does this remind you of the 1960s? We used to have this all the time during the 1960s. I'm beginning to get a little bit homesick. Now then, I'm just kidding about that modified martial law. Let each of you speak your hearts without interruption, and bear in mind that freedom from interruption carries with it responsibility to be reasonably brief. John Van Soest.
Well, Barry, Leroy's speaking as though I want blacks in slavery, and I don't want the rights or the wrongs that have been done to blacks corrected. I'm just saying that I don't want my country destroyed and whites discriminated against like blacks were to right those wrongs. I mean, this idiotic affirmative action where whites are outrageously discriminated against, and things are being done to them for the same reasons that they were done to blacks because of their color. Do you ever notice there's a new thing going on in this country, that if you want to make something sound legal and correct, no matter how wrong it is, you put a legal sounding name on it and it becomes all right. They use that inane term, affirmative, for discrimination against whites, just like the Students for a Democratic Society hid behind they were like termites hiding in the woodwork of democracy, and they used the term democratic. They're all socialist and Marxist. So this is what's going on in this country. No matter what you say, if you take a look around, most of the negative things that are happening in this country are being caused by blacks and Puerto Ricans, and it's because they are just naturally arrogant, aggressive, and they walk around with a chip on their shoulder saying, I'm going to get back at that white racist society, and we're not going to take nothing, and nobody's going to stop us. And these safari bearers with these gigantic radios on their shoulders are a perfect example. They don't want to listen to the music that loud. They do it because this is a sign of belligerence and arrogance. The new sign of well-being is the radio instead of the Cadillac. They can't afford the Cadillac, so they go around and carry these gigantic radios on their shoulders and blare them as a sign of defiance to the white racist society. And I've got 1,000 other things to say, but I'll let Leroy just
But you see, the most important, the tragedy with you, I listen to you, I would like to discuss something like this with somebody that has bona fide complaints based on, you are outright hostile, bigoted man. You're talking about radios. You're talking about, you see, dealing with you is impossible because you're talking about the arrogance of kind of loud radio. You're getting so picayune. You're getting so, the problems of this country is not picayune. It's not petty. It's not a boy walking down the street with a radio. It's not a guy looking for a Cadillac. That is the problem of this country. The problem of this country goes way back. You see, thinking people in this country, thank God there are thinking people in this country, realize what has been done to the sight of the black. They realize when you discriminate against people for 300 years, you don't just pretend it never exists. There's a price to pay. There is a price to pay for 300 years of discrimination. Probably whatever job you have today, if you had to compete on the equal basis with a black man, you probably wouldn't have had it. And of course, this 300 years have crippled the sight of the black man. Now this, we have to correct it in this country. The problem has to be corrected. It cannot be corrected with people like you. It has to be corrected with people that look at the overall problem to save this country. What you're thinking and what you're talking is the destruction of this country. Because what you're trying to do is create a war between white and black. And you know who suffers? You, because the blacks have nothing. You see, and you are the bigot, the hater, the person that's going to take little things like a man with a radio and little things, arrogant. Can you imagine the nerve to talk, blacks are arrogant? Arrogant in what respect? You know, if they were arrogant, the whole country would be in flames. You see,
more blackmail.
No, look, let me tell you something. Let me tell you one thing.
More blackmail.
Well, let me tell you,
do what we want, or we're going to destroy.
Look, let me tell you, if they were going to destroy it, let me tell you something. Nothing bothers me more than the white man's lack of appreciation of the nonviolent way and the docile way in which the blacks have accepted the shame and the humiliation they have in this country. I'm amazed that I see white people so excited about the Hungarian freedom fighters, the Cuban freedom fighters, and never realize that if blacks took the same vein, there would be no United States for you to sit here and holler your racist, hostile, nasty attitude, which is non-productive, which will accomplish absolutely nothing. And all it would do would make the gap between the races wider. And I don't believe that is what we want to do in this country, because nothing can be accomplished. We have to get down and get these two-bit phony politicians that are only interested in one thing, votes. And we have to get together with reasonable people, not people like you, because there's no hope for you. All you want to do is condemn and make excuses and blame all the troubles of the world on blacks and Puerto Ricans, which are powerless. Now, well, all right, you tell your part.
I'm not trying to blame all the troubles of the world on blacks and Puerto Ricans. I'm blaming all the troubles of the United States on mainly blacks and Puerto Ricans. You say that the reason that I'm just spewing out my frustration is because I have no power to do these. I'm not a mayor or I'm not a governor, but I would like to sit down with the governor and tell them exactly how I feel, because they have no guts to do anything about it. If they lay the law down and say, you get your rear end in school and you learn and you don't sell drugs and you don't beat up people and rob or rape, or you're going to pay the penalty, they're afraid to say that because the NAACP will be out demonstrating 50,000 strong because some governor had the nerve to say something like this. And blacks aren't thankful that whites are trying to correct the situation. Why
should I be thankful? If you got a foot in my if you have a foot in my behind and you pull it out slowly, I'm going to thank you at the rate you pull it out? It should never been there in the first place.
Not thankful for that, but at least thankful to see that these wrongs have been done and we're trying to do something about them.
Look, you know, when I grew up, you know, now what you're saying to me is this. You are a bigot. If blacks, there was not one single incident of crime in this country perpetrated by a black, you'd still be a bigot. You're looking for excuses. When I grew up, crime was almost non-existent among blacks and in this country. you couldn't get a ham sandwich with dignity. You couldn't get a job. There was no crime. Where was all this crime?
When we reconvene, we'll make it a three-way war. I'm Barry Farber, and every time I try to walk into the troubled valley here in my white robes as a grand conciliator, a peacemaker, a diplomat, both sides start opening machine gun fire, and I got to run back to my cave up at the top of the hill, scattering my posies behind me that I had intended to pass out to the respective sides here. Leroy Colbert and John Van Soest. Leroy Colbert, former Mr. America, a black. John Van Soest, an American white who says the negative things that are going on in America are because of blacks and Puerto Ricans. Gentlemen, go ahead and have your last burst of machine gun fire at each other, because in the break right now, John Van Soest was talking about the flags. Go through that flag routine again, John.
Well, I was just saying that I'm tired of seeing red, green, and black flags on the back of black cars without an American flag there, and Puerto Rican flags without American flags. I do not... Leroy said in the last segment that I would be a racist regardless. I do not like two types of people that are destroying this nation. 90% of the blacks, as far as I'm concerned, and 90% of the Puerto Ricans. I think that Czechoslovakians that have come to this country, the people from Eastern Europe, England, all those people, a lot of people from India, China, these are all excellent citizens for the most part. They don't destroy, they don't put graffiti all over the train cars. These people love this country. They appreciate this country. But the South Americans, Dominican Republic, Puerto Ricans, and the young blacks coming up today that align themselves with these people because this represents a united front against whitey. These people unite, and they despise this country, and the proof of it is in the people that they love. Muhammad Ali, who's never said anything good about this country and despised whites. Angela Davis, who's an admitted communist, is a big hero of the blacks. Malcolm X, who's an out-and-out anti-white and anti-American racist skunk. You could go right down the list. All the heroes of the blacks are anti-American and anti-white. And the blacks all cheer them on. Jesse Jackson, too. They have the nerve to cheer you on, right? They have the nerve to call Jesse Jackson Reverend. This guy's nothing but a rebel-rousing troglodyte.
All right. My point is, let me now walk down into the valley. Put your guns down.
What fascinates me, Barry, though, is this fella here really thinks he's important. He really thinks that his white skin makes him a messiah. Now I look at this guy and I watch him rambling and raving like he's some guru sitting on a mountain, making the decision what races are viable and which isn't. He thinks his white skin, what have you ever done in life? What makes you anything? What makes you sit here and condemn and decide whose heroes should be who? Who the hell are you?
Well, you...
But a white face, that's all you are. And that makes you something special, right?
I have not said that.
Well, you're acting like it.
No.
You're sitting here saying what races are admissible, what races are not.
No, I'm not saying
Who the hell are you?
I'm saying two races.
What have you done? Have you done anything but breathe?
Let me answer you. I'm saying two races. At the beginning of the program, you said I was pompous. Now who's being pompous?
You are pompous because you're the one I have yet to mention who should live on this earth and who shouldn't.
No,
who are you? You think because you're white skinned that you're somebody? What have you done? Have you helped anybody? What are you? You're nothing.
I'll tell you what I've done.
What's special about you?
Well, wait a minute. Who says that I'm
special
reacting
because you're telling me what races should be coming into the country, what races are viable, what races you should respect, what heroes these races have. Who are you?
Once again,
a white face.
Once again, you're putting words in my mouth.
Well, you didn't say that.
Gentlemen. Okay, Mr. Van Soest.
Once again, he's putting words in my mouth. I'm speaking of two races. I would not want to get rid of any other races in this country. Just these two. So I don't want to kill them. I just want to... They're so anxious to get out of America. I mean, they despise these two. So I don't want to kill them. I just want to... They're so anxious to get out of America. I mean, they despise this country so much. I don't know why they're not leaving. Right. They seem so unhappy with America.
All right. Here's my viewpoint. I have met both of you before. Leroy will recognize what I'm saying when I agree with him that the politicians are at fault. I don't think you can say 90% of this, or 90% of gypsies don't play the violin, 90% of Italians do not sing in the shower, 90% of Mexicans do not lean up against a cactus and say they went that way. I understand, John Van Soest, as a young man, you think that it's 90% blacks hate them. They, in fact, do not. But that's a different argument, and I've had that one with you, and I'll have that with others from now on, because I believe that the best hidden news in America is that the overwhelming majority of blacks and Puerto Ricans are middle class, if not in their economy yet, at least in their values. They want what you want, an end of crime. They want an end of degradation. They want people to obey the law. They want to educate their children. They want to clean up and raise standards at every single hand. Now then, Leroy, let's consider the following. There are hordes, gangs of kids in every major American city, destroying, defacing that city, terrorizing it, cutting off its economic circulation by making the streets unsafe to walk in. We all agree on that. Turn the page. An overwhelming, a disturbing, lopsided majority of those marauding gangs are non-white. Non-white. Now then, first of all, who do we blame? Let me just draw a scorecard now, in case you're trying. This is not television, so you can't see us. John Van Soest blames blacks and Puerto Ricans. He says they are by nature violent and destructive. Leroy Colbert and Barry Farber blame opportunistic politicians, mostly white, who have created a climate in this country which makes it not only permissible but almost inevitable. It downright invites the wrong kind of growing up with the wrong kind of attitudes. It engenders hostility and destruction. Now, Leroy, what do we do about it? We all three agree that there are marauding gangs of non-whites, okay? I agree with you, Leroy, that we should not exacerbate relations. We should not get into throwing, shooting, or even shouting. Then we would simply have no country. The first thing John said was he loves this country. I'm going to take him at his word. If he loves this country, he does not want racial war. I love this country. I know good and well you love this country. I haven't yet told John Van Soest why. My regular listeners will remember the way you grew up. But what do we do about it?
Well, excuse me. Well, Barry, let's face it. I'm black, and I grew up among blacks, and I know a lot more blacks than John knows. And John only knows blacks too, so he can build his vendetta. But what I'm trying to say is this country for blacks is the best country in the world. I mean, materially and opportunity at the present time. Now, when I grew up, I happened to be of a very strong will, and I have the type of mind that a lot of all the rejections and that I got growing up as a young boy, I was able to overcome, because I knew that wallowing in the excesses of discrimination in this country wasn't going to help me to get ahead. I have friends that are today very bitter. I have friends that fought in World War II and told about the discrimination and how he saw his buddy die on the front, and when he got back to the United States, the German prisoners were able to eat in the restaurant he couldn't eat in. You know, this is something that whites wouldn't tolerate for a moment. It's not in their nature. And I think we must first understand the nature of people. Blacks, as a rule, are more docile than whites. This is no doubt about it. You're talking about, they are more docile. Whites will not stand for 10 minutes what blacks have stood in this country. I mean, you can see it all. There's no sense that we're trying to pretend that because you got gangs running around stealing because they can get away with it, that somehow blacks are so much strong. Black people, as a rule, are more docile. The acceptance of slavery for the years that the blacks accepted in this country is unheard of in history, without real attempts to overcome their oppressors. Now, in this country, I don't believe that. I think white people should basically understand that there has been a deep psychological scarring of the black in this country. Now, instead of condemning the excesses that the blacks are committing now, which some blacks are committing now, is to understand the problem and try to correct it. We either going to live in this country together, or we're going to live in this country destroyed. There's no doubt about it, because there's no way with this, what John is talking, there's nothing can lead to except bloodshed in the street. Now, I feel that the only thing has to be done to stop this marauding and the crime and the rape and whatever you want is that the laws must be carried out and the criminal must be told that he is not going to be pat on the back because he is black. That is the only way this is going to stop.
Okay.
Cuddling criminals have to stop.
Could we agree on that? Go back to enforcement of the law. Enforce the law upon the wrongdoer, regardless of race,
color,
creed, or color. Right? Okay, John.
The breaking of the law has nothing to do with past deprivations.
When we get back together, we'll continue. It'll be John's turn. I'm Barry Farber. One of my best friends in life was in the North Korean Communist Army. We're very dear friends now, and we frequently laugh about what would have happened if we'd met each other in 1952. Who would have shot each other first? There would have been absolutely no sentimentality through those gun sights. The funny thing now is that if John Van Soest were not here, Leroy Colbert would be coming down with righteous thunder upon wrongdoers, first of all, black wrongdoers, because he is black, and Leroy agrees with me that you should criticize your own first. And if Leroy were not here, John Van Soest would admire him so very much if I were to tell him about Leroy. Let me tell you about this man who's sitting here, John. Talk about upward mobility and taking advantage of your opportunity. He's a former Mr. America, and looks like he could take off his shirt and walk right back into the ring and be a Mr. America this afternoon, tomorrow morning. Leroy did not have a gym. He did not have trainers. He did not have Olympic officials fawning all over him in the weightlifting competition. He had nothing except a basement where he wasn't even supposed to go, but where he went anyhow because he wanted to develop his body. And his first set of weights was a broomstick with a bucket of water on each end. And then he graduated to bricks on each end. And then the landlord found out that Miss Colbert's little boy was down there messing up the basement with buckets of water and bricks, and he figured he would discourage him by not telling him when the coal was going to be delivered. So all of a sudden, the door would open above his head, and he'd be smothered in coal with his makeshift weights of broomsticks and buckets of water, and so on up. And he's now one of the most successful businessmen in New York City. He is Leroy Colbert of the World Health Centers. There are 3 of them now, one on the east side of Manhattan, one on the west side, and one in Englewood. So Leroy is not the kind of person you're talking about. You all were discussing Muhammad Ali during the break. What was it that you said that started it, John?
Well, Muhammad Ali is such a hero to the black people. They forget that he's Muhammad Ali for no other reason than he tried to dodge the draft. He changed his name to Muhammad Ali to make it look as though he became religious, and he said he wasn't going to fight anymore because he didn't believe in violence and he didn't want to go to Vietnam. But yet, after he beat the rap, he went right back into the ring, but he had to keep the name Muhammad Ali because he would have looked like a phony if he changed it back to Cassius Clay, which I still call him. He's never said one good thing about this country. He's never said one good thing about whites, and yet he's a big hero to the blacks. For the same reasons that Malcolm X, that anti-white and anti-American bigot, is a big hero to the blacks. The blacks back up anybody who despised this country and never says anything good about this country. Look at Andrew Young. I don't understand this nonsense that if someone is the same color as you or religious background, that you back them up no matter what, because this happens to be a mainly white country, and if you don't, whitey's going to get us because they outnumber us something like 10,000 to 1. If most of the killings and rapings and negative things were done by white people, I'd be the first to knock them, but not blacks. He says blacks are more docile than whites. Take a look in the New York News any day a vicious crime is committed. Anytime you open up the paper, I don't even have to look at it, the name or anything. 99% of the time, there's no doubt in my mind. Wait a minute, I let you speak. No. I knew he was going to bring up this mass murders nonsense. You see, that
Brankowitz was black, huh?
Oh, wait a minute.
Come on.
When I'm not talking about. You see, that's a one. See, let me finish.
You're sin.
That's a one. When you get these killings, these mass killings, it's a one-shot deal by a guy who happens to be a maniac.
How many one-shotters have you been reading?
Maybe 3 or 4 or 5
Just
or 6 in the last few years.
uh.
But every day you open up the paper, and this is a way of life with blacks and Puerto Ricans. This is the way they live. They rob, steal, rape. Do you know why the auto insurance parts have gone up? The auto insurance has gone up in the last few years? Because Puerto Ricans are going around robbing cars left and right and stealing parts.
Hold it, Leroy. You'll have right of response when we reconvene. Okay, Leroy, your turn.
Well, Barry, it's very hard for me to deal. I'm sitting here. I'm sitting here with a fella here that everything comes out of his mouth is reek with twisting and hate, and you can't deal with, because you see, I deal entirely. If I sat here, I could sit here right now, Barry, and talk about all of the things that happened to me hostile by whites, and say how I hate them. They're the reason why I have this hate in me. And anybody that looks for an excuse to hate will find it. And this fella here is reeked with hate. And for me to sit here and have a dialogue with him is a waste of time, you see. Because I don't have that kind of hate. I don't have hate for anybody. Because I realize whatever condition there is, it can be corrected with decent, level-headed people looking at a problem in a sensible manner and not making excuses to be hateful. Now, when you want to hate, Barry, you will find reasons to hate. It's just like a guy say all blacks are lazy, and you show him 1,000 blacks working, he don't see him. First man he laying down, say, I told you so. See, because when a man wants to hate, nothing you can do to save him. Now, for me to sit here and discuss something with this fella here, I realize as he talks about the skunk, Muhammad Ali is a skunk, because Muhammad Ali don't satisfy his psyche. He's a skunk. And I listen to this fella and I say to myself, what has this fella done in life to make him this Messiah that he's calling himself? To make him to be able to rule on the viability to all of these men that have accomplished things, bona fide men that have that Muhammad Ali is the most known and revered man on earth at the present time. But yet you say, who do you think support Muhammad Ali? Blacks? What do you think Muhammad Ali made his millions from? Blacks? No, he's made it from whites.
Well, at the beginning of the program, I said before that there are certain, look, first of all, when people go to boxing matches, they're not looking at color. But I'm looking more at his politics. I don't like the man's politics. You're using all these cryptic cliches. Yet the shame of it is, Barry, that whenever anybody speaks the truth about what's going on, they always come off as the Nazi racist, the fascist, and he's going to come off as the intellectual who wants to sit down and solve the problems. Blacks aren't interested in having. They feel that if they solve things, it's going to be like they gave in to the white racist society if they kowtow to something that's decent.
Gentlemen, debates like this end exactly the way boxing matches end. Not after the completion of a certain planned flurry of punches, but at the bell. And this is it. Thank you very much. John Van Soest, a young man willing to admit that he is bigoted and eager to tell us why. And Leroy Colbert, old friend of these microphones, former Mr. America, and a man who in many ways is the voice of America across America. I'm Barry Farber. Keep asking questions.
I quit this bitch.
Wait a minute. Before you click away, I want you to subscribe, like, comment, hell, even dislike if you want to. At least do something before you get out of here. MrYorkieLoverFitness.com